hello again to everyone, and thanks for joining us. My name is Frank Bosi. I'm the Director of Business Development here at Hostfully, and along with my colleague Federico, who's our Manager of Business Development. And today we're graciously joined by the wonderful co-founder of Homads, Vi. Not going to even try to...
Pre-Bertshauser.
There we go. Beautiful. Yeah, so again, today we at Hostfully, we're so excited to be one of the first partners to work with Homads on this really exciting new channel for property managers looking to increase their longer term stays. So personally, during my meetings and my demos, we've had a lot of interest and questions from our customers and actually non-customers in the property management space that we're really excited to share and present some of the learnings that we've gotten from Homads in our partnership with you. And also to help everyone understand how they can increase their distribution and revenue to the entire new-ish market by using Homads. So before we jump into the webinar and before Vi takes it off, I just wanted to let you know a little bit more about Hostfully. For those of you who are not familiar, we're a vacation rental management software that helps you run your business from tip to tail. We essentially strive to help vacation rental companies and property managers make more money, save time, and really streamline and automate your day-to-day operations and improve the overall traveler experience. Now, Hostfully has two products. These are both completely standalone products. You have the property management platform and the digital guidebook. So both of them are fully integrated. So you're of course more than welcome to use both of them together. But again, you also have the option to use just the property management software or just the digital guidebook. On the property management platform side, we have direct integrations with major OTAs, Homads now being one of them, and a bunch of other channels. And really, we work as a channel manager for those OTAs. So Hostfully will be your central software and hub in managing all of your reservations. We have a great pipeline feature, which is really cool and unique to the industry. And here is where you see all of your guests and exactly where they are in the process of their booking. And basically, you manage your operations in different ways other than other softwares. We have really nice out-of-the-box direct booking site available to all of our users, and also included in our software are automated messages, both email and text messaging, reports, analytics, payment processors, and we have a wonderful new unified inbox and a whole lot more to help you run your vacation rental business. And then we also have our standalone guidebook platform. And this is really unique and beautiful platform where we really focus on enhancing the guest experience. We make it easy to share important information for your guest about their trip, like their check-in details, direction, house manual, and all of your favorite recommendations also. Again, this aims in boosting your guest experience. It cuts down on communication, and it also has the ability to get you those 5-star reviews. You also have a great upselling feature to increase your overall income as well. Now, the property management platform has been winning awards. We're super excited. It's been fantastic. We won Man Landau's VRMB Keystone Award the first year that they had it for the best vacation rental software. And then they just released the Keystone Awards for 2021, and we won again, making us back-to-back winners. One of the main evaluators, Terry White, he said that Hostfully is one of the best softwares, period, I have ever seen. And then same thing for the guidebooks. Erica is a client of ours and basically said has the same view as many of our other clients. And here she stated that the guidebook totally blew her away. We saved her a ton of time. And also the guidebook is more professional than your average Word document or PDF. So if you haven't tested out our guidebooks yet, we have a free trial for all subscriptions and also one free guidebook for everyone who wants to kick the tires and test it out. Lastly, we have reports and webinars. So in addition to our incredible platform and beautiful guidebooks, we have these great reports and a library of recorded webinars. We have a variety of reports available on our website, which I encourage you all to check out at your leisure. It's hostfully.com/2021 report, and it has a good selection of reports, future reports, multi-channel distribution reports, and other reports that just really great insight that can be helpful and useful to your business. So again, I encourage you to check those out directly on your website. We have a ton to offer you there, along with blog posts and articles. And again, if you want any additional information on any of our products, please feel free to reach out. We're always happy to coordinate and schedule a one-on-one demo with you. But really, that's enough about Hostfully. I'm going to go ahead and hand this over to Vi with Homads. Vi, again, we're super excited to be one of the first partners to work with you and with Homads, and to share some of the learnings that we've gotten from Homads and our partnerships during today's webinar. So Vi, go ahead. Feel free to take it from here. Thank you so much again for being with us.
Of course. Thanks, Frank. So for just a quick overview with Homads, essentially we are monthly rental marketplace, right? So what that means, and this is where we'll get a little bit on this question as well of the difference between regulations and legalities. So we say monthly, and of course most people think, oh, okay, is that 30 days, 31 days? And that really, we do it, that is, everything is 30 days or longer. When you start looking at the definition of this, it's actually by every city, right? So certain cities, like where we're homegrown, is Austin, Texas. And so the city of Austin says is 30 days or longer is not short-term rentals, right? Versus other cities will say, hey, it's 31 days. So that's one of those, every city is so different. So it's something that every property manager or host needs to take a look at. So I'll go a little bit. You want me to go into the questions that we have up here, I assume? Yeah. All right. So
realized that was on mute. So.
Yeah.
So I should have just said we're kind of having more of an open-ended, very different than the usual webinars that we do and that you've watched. We're just going to kind of keep it conversant between Hostfully and Vi. Again, remember there's a questions tab. Feel free. Again, it's an open-ended webinar, fully conversant. So any questions you have, feel free to ask away, and we will kind of keep track of that. So yeah, I mean, we'll ask you the questions. We'll just have a organic discussion and we'll go from there. So question number one is, what are the differences in regulations and legalities for monthly term rental, right? And short-term rental?
Yeah, is there a monthly or medium term, whichever?
Medium term.
Pretty much coined that term, right? So back in 2016 was when we first started Homeads, and no one really considered, hey, let's do monthly rentals. And so it was really, a lot of these terms were not utilized. Now, so the reason why it got started was essentially because we did not want to get into the regulations and legalities space of all of it. Obviously, there are some differences that are just as concerning as, hey, we have to get permitting, or we have to pay hospitality, or occupancy taxes. Those are one part, but then the other part is you lean more into landlord or tenant rights, right? And so those are the things that don't mix that well whenever you do short-term rentals or medium-term rentals. You at least need to know which one is which, right? Okay. Because it affects how you handle your renters. So for instance, whenever someone uses a platform, it is actually very, very different from than if you were just a landlord that said, hey, here's a lease, sign that, and then let's, do 2 months or a month to month where you continue to extend it. It, again, will likely depend on your city, but oftentimes there is something where the legalities of it allows it to where you're allowing them to lease a license to lease rather than an actual lease. And so there are definitely some nuances here, which is hence the title of this, right? You have your short-term rentals, which is just like your hotels, right? So if it gets into legalities of, hey, we have someone here and now they're staying and it's just like a guest that is like criminally trespassing, right? If you go into that route. You go into a lease, normally it's going to be an eviction. We're somewhere in the middle, and it really kind of depends. And so that's like worst case scenario of how things work out in terms of the legalities. Obviously with short-term rentals, it's more of, hey, if you don't have a permit, you're getting fined. In Austin, it's $2,000 a day, that sort of stuff. Yeah, if it gets pretty. I believe Austin is one of the more strict short-term rental cities. They've always been pretty strict about it. If you remember what happened in Uber and Lyft, they kicked out all of that. So yeah, probably not as accepting as it could be.
Awesome.
Yeah, we have another question.
Go for it.
Oh, sorry, Frank. You
No, go for it. Yep.
Here, Miro is asking if he's not sure if in the US, but in Canada, you can manage short-term rental without a real estate license. does anything change in US or Canada when if you start managing monthly rentals? Like, should they do anything?
No. So for the US particularly, you do not need to have like a license or anything to do a monthly rental, right? It's just similar, the same thing. So that was one of the reasons why monthly rentals was a lot easier, is it was like getting a roommate, right? It was really easy. It was just more of the advertising side of it. That may change. There are certain places now that, and mostly it's more like with your HOA, right? Those are even more localized of, hey, this is a restriction where you need to have 60 days or 90 days. But US wise, for instance, there are no issues with monthly rentals.
Great. Thank you for that, Miro.
Here, I have another one. Sorry,
oh, you do?
Frank.
Yeah, no, go for it. I'm not in the questions tab, so go for it.
Which are the most popular cities that you're seeing right now that the digital nomad market is growing?
Yeah, for sure. So where we have always started was how we would call it is second tier growing cities. Austin was one of them, but they actually, we see actually less because, as you know, the cities has grown a lot since COVID had hit. But looking at Tampa, New Orleans, Philadelphia, those types of cities where Homads, we particularly also have a lot of single family homes. Apartments, we do, but normally it's going to be, because second tier cities, you can normally buy a home, right? You're coming from Washington or like DC, New York, California, you want to buy a home and it's $300K. A lot of people in Austin will say that's very expensive, but actually that's really cheap in comparison to these bigger metro cities.
Yeah, I guess since we're talking about that, so I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I have a lot of prospects from the Carolinas that I do demos with, and they always say like having that monthly rental while they're visiting the city, staying in that unit, and then searching for a home to buy. So I feel like that's also been growing significantly.
Yeah, for instance, most people don't think this is where it's a good alternative, is because, you know, most people think, hey, I'm going to do a short-term rental and it's going to be really close to all of the tourist attraction, right? And so then they say, oh, okay, well, we live out in the suburbs. Does it really make sense to do this? Because I'm not going to get that much people in. And we'll get into this in the questions later, but I'm happy to talk about it now, is like you have to hybrid it in the sense, or like think about it in the sense of, okay, if it's close to a lot of tourist attractions, then I'll get a high occupancy, right? But if it's out in the suburbs, so I get a lot. And so do you then build it more for a monthly rental? For instance, like Round Rock is north of us, right? It was like a 4-bedroom house, but it was furnished and decorated like, you know, and turnkey pretty much as a short-term rental. But they also listed it as monthly rentals. They booked out with monthly for a pretty decent pricing that they normally would not get, right? And it's just different. It's people who, you know, had something happen to their home, and so their insurance is having them stay somewhere. Or, hey, I'm moving, and now I got to figure out, is this city the right city, or do I do surrounding cities? So similar to what you were saying, right?
Great. Actually, we have a question from Michelle, and this is pretty good. What are the amenities that nomads are looking for in their units?
For sure. So I talked about two things, and it'll also be in the questions too, which
how about, do you want
to jumping? Honestly,
yeah, do you want to maybe let's do the questions that we have, and then we'll do all the fun questions.
How about that?
All right, cool, because I'm sure we're going to touch on everything. All right, awesome, fantastic. Let's do that. So question number 2 is, should you prepare or advertise your rental any differently for an MTR?
Yeah. So whenever people who are looking, and this is actually, I'll answer Michelle's question too. Here is like, they are different users, right? There are people you're looking to live there. And so they're not looking at, hey, can I walk to the beach here? Unless that's their everyday lifestyle, right? Normally, pre-COVID, it was how close is it to work, right? Now it's more of the amenities of how close is it to the kids' school, Are there parks nearby? You know, if you have a dog or if you want to bring your kids there, it's more of, you know, or is there a decent grocery store that is within close distance, right? And so you think more of, it's still turnkey because they need that within that period that they're staying with you, but they're also checking out that neighborhood in that area. And because it is 30 days, it is, they research so much more. Like with short-term rentals, you normally will have someone that's like, hey, you know what, we're last minute gonna stay this weekend, and go for that booking, right? With Homads, it is typically, hey, you know what, I'm gonna be here for 3 months, I'm thinking about moving here, and it's a month and a half ahead, right? They're looking at least a month ahead before they actually do something. So you're not gonna get a lot of last minute ones, and if they are, it typically doesn't work out very well. So yeah, so a lot of the amenities are going to be more for living rather than like the fun, what do you do as a tourist kind of thing. You also have a lot of people who are working from home nowadays. So having a setup where it is good for a digital nomad. So having, you know, really fast internet, having a desk, that helps a lot for people who are going to be staying there for a longer term.
Great. And then question number 3 is, what should I expect in terms of maintenance if I were to do monthly rentals?
Yeah, for sure. So that is a big difference that a lot of people don't realize too. Normally, a lot of hosts who do short-term rentals don't realize how much access they have to their property, right? And so when you completely shut it off for a month or longer, it's a, you know, almost a panic, I think, for a lot of early hosts that go from short-term to long-term. If they go from annual leases to medium-term, then, you know, it's easier for them. So those are moments where you have to realize like, hey, if I, you know, want to control where my listing is cleaned often, then you put that in your listings. You put those numbers in terms of like how much you charge as well. Okay. And then you say, hey, in my description, we have, you know, bi-weekly cleanings or something like that, right? Otherwise you get, and this is kind of why I never liked annual leases. I hated trusting how clean and like put together a listing is until the end of the year, right? That's the worst to me. So if you do that, you ensure that your listing will actually stay up to date and maintained. The second part is it is less maintenance, and meaning you can not have to worry typically about that listing and the turnover so often, because normally it's 2 or 3 days, maybe like 5 days to a week, as long as for short-term rentals, right? But you're always having to have a cleaner come in, reset. Here you expect more of, hey, it's going to be just that one day that when they move out that it gets reset, but it's going to be a much more robust type of cleaning and setting everything back up.
Great. And then can you do both STR and MTR at the same time?
All right. Yeah. A lot of people, so we call it hybrid hosts, right? People that do that. This is really helpful for people who are in cities that have seasonality, right? Whether that be big events or even it's too hot, it's over 100 degrees for the whole month, right? Or cold. That happens very often. And so what people will do is when it's not the hot months in the sense of hot, meaning people coming to the city and wanting to do a lot of tourism, they get in a monthly rental to cover those spaces. So occupancy is always higher within them. But the part where it doesn't work is that you have to be very deliberate about that. You have to know these are the months I do monthly rentals. These are the months I don't do monthly rentals, because you get one short-term rental within a slower month, then you can't really rent out monthly anymore, right? So they're very, very deliberate about when they do monthly rentals or not. I can talk a little bit about differences. I think a lot of hosts also don't understand, you know, the stability side, revenue, that sort of stuff. And this has changed actually a lot during COVID with more adoption of monthly rentals too. So stability wise, you compare it to annual leases where you have a whole year covered, right? And you have short-term rentals where it's a gamble. And with every gamble, you can make a lot of money. You have stability, it's less money. Homads or monthly rentals are really in the middle, where you still get a decent amount of money. It's not like your gamble of a short-term rental, but you don't have to worry about 1 to 3 months for each person, right? And so we really are stable within, in the middle of that. In terms of revenue, this is changing a lot, is that typically home ads or monthly rentals were always in the middle as well. Now, because there are larger sites that push monthly rentals, mainly only because of COVID, right? No one wanted to share homes or anything during the pandemic. And so that made it where people, not only there was more demand because people realized, hey, I can leave because my kids are just, they're just on their iPads. So I can leave for a month and go to LA, right? Mm-hmm. So that created demand, but then also for supply, that actually increased the amount of money that people could ask for as well. Because normally they came from the, hey, it's an annual lease, so I'll do a little bit more because it's furnished and, turnkey. We've seen it where it's more of coming from the short-term rental side, and they are charging almost similarly same pricing, but times 30, right? Mm-hmm. So it's still moderately there, but I do see the price rising.
Great. And how would your revenue management strategies differ from an MTR to an STR?
As in, explain what you mean by them.
It was one of our questions from Eddie. So he said, how do your revenue management strategies differ from a midterm to a short-term rental?
I'm trying to understand.
You kind of touched on it. Like you could price the monthly a little bit higher or an annual a little bit higher, but maybe because there's so much more risk involved with the short term, maybe you price that a little higher and maybe have an incentive for those individuals who do a month, midterm.
Yeah.
That's where you're going with it, Eddie?
Yeah. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Like like a pricing engine. Yeah.
Oh, okay. As in, so pricing for monthly rentals, I will say, is difficult to understand because it is so new. We've been around, but it's like our data is nothing comparison to short-term rentals or even then hotels, right? Before short-term rentals were a thing, hotels were a thing. So you could at least extrapolate what that pricing would look like. The best way to do that is maybe look at corporate housing. That's always been around, but it's different, right? It's different from what we do as well, and then the type of people that we have. So I will say pricing is harder to do. What we always told the best for most people, they have air DNA, right? If you do short-term rentals. With monthly rentals, it is different. And as I mentioned before, a lot of people are kind of doing it where they can look at their short-term rentals and then multiply it. It becomes a pretty large number. Like we've seen some 11 or 14K a month kind of thing. But again, it was their insurance paying, so they didn't care, right? So there are kind of different ways to go about it. If you do it more organically, typically you just say, hey, search neighborhoods, see what that pricing looks like. Your competitors, kind of what you would typically do with other sites. But one of the things that actually is important is, so we don't penalize our hosts for not responding or accepting a booking. That is something that a lot of hosts are scared of for other booking sites is, hey, I put it out there and it's a low price, but I realized I got 10 requests and I realized I lowballed it, right? But if they don't respond or they turn it down, their rating goes really, really low. We don't actually penalize for any of that. And so it's easy for you to come out there and be like, hey, okay, I'm going to put it at this price. I'm not getting anything. Do I do it lower? You can kind of play a little bit more.
Yeah. And then we just had a comment. He said, this is from Monty. He said, STR can engage in revenue management by listing on multiple channels, whereas monthly rentals are more straightforward, as you can offer length of stay discounts.
Well.
And then number 5, what are the pros and cons of midterm and versus short-term rentals in terms of revenue?
Oh,
so we kind of touched on this.
Yeah, we did touch a little bit on that one. So that one, I think we may have already.
Yeah, we answered that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty lively. We have a ton of questions. Fede, do you kind of want to go through them?
Sure, let's go. So here we have a question from Spencer saying, how would HOMADs work in a boutique hotel?
Application, yeah. So it'd be similar, right? we normally have a lot of single family homes just because of the cities we're in, but it doesn't exclude, for instance, we have like LA and San Francisco areas, and a lot of them are just apartments or hotels, right? And so it's similar, same thing. There are other models that will take, you know, the monthly rental model and then bring it to hotels like Sonder, and I'm trying to think if there is one in Austin, and I completely blanked on that one. The Guild. And so those types of models where they do only monthly, I think they actually pivoted during COVID as well. Super easy. They normally list on, you know, all the other platforms. Homads, same thing. You can list it. This probably will actually be helpful on Federico. We talked about having a question of the business model, right? Or how we charge. And so it's super easy. Our biggest job or what we do for you is the marketing aspect. We bring in the people who want the monthly rentals, and we really listened to people and all the hosts when COVID first happened. Is we initially did the traditional, hey, we'll take 8% of the booking as a booking fee, and you know, go from there. Very basic, what every other platform does. But after the whole fiasco with everything and not getting refunds and all that stuff that had happened a couple of years back, we said, you know what? A lot of people want to book directly with their people, right? And we internally actually make it easy for you to screen anyone. So short-term rentals, you normally don't screen anyone because you're not gonna have to worry. It's a couple of days, you have no renters' rights, you have no issues. For us, we do screening reports. So you see, you know, pretty much, have they ever been evicted? What is like, and anything on their background check, credit score. It checks with their employers. Is this the revenue that they actually, you know, or the income that they actually take home, everything. And so it's super easy, seamless, and then you can make that decision pretty easily. And so we said, okay, well, because before screenings, we wouldn't want you to go off the platform because too many people get screwed over not knowing how to do that, right? Now we said, okay, well, if you want to book directly, just let us advertise it and just pay an annual fee, right? And so it's actually a lot cheaper for you to do an annual fee than to just do bookings directly with us. Because we felt like if you think about it from a individual mom and pop mindset, the reason why it's hard to do a direct booking site only is because your marketing dollars are fighting against, you know, every word that Airbnb, VRBO, everyone pays like a lot of money every month to compete for those words. So whenever you as an individual site tries to do that, you're competing a lot with that versus we're combining it here with Homads so that we can advertise it for you. And you just take the listing or the inquiry directly.
Nice. Yeah, now we have Michelle asking about service dog. So if you don't allow pets and someone claims to have a service dog, which questions are you allowed to ask? I know this is a sensitive issue because you cannot say no, right?
Yeah, so this is the part where I think we give a lot more freedom. Because we allow you to go off the platform, our job is to connect you to those renters. That's it. So if you decide, hey, you know what, I am going to now have you talk directly with our management firm, and we have our process. We do bookings just fine. Like you can book on Homads. We have the full platform, and we only charge you the credit card transaction fee, right? And so that's super easy. It really is just a great tool if you are a book direct type of property owner. So then it depends on the rules that you follow in terms of, you know, if pets are allowed, that sort of stuff. But we also generally we're open about the communication, things like that. We haven't had any problems. And maybe with larger platforms, there's a lot of adoption, and so maybe those problems arose, but with us, we haven't had any problems.
Perfect. Yeah, here we have another question asking about does Homads had a commission or a subscription-based model? How does it work on your end?
Okay, that was what I was talking about earlier, is that we actually have both, right? So if you don't do the subscription side, then we'll take the 8%. If you do the subscription side, then you can pretty much up to, I believe it was like 15 or 25 properties for $180 for the year. So it's super cheap, super easy. We really, again, are a tool to just bring those renters in and get you the increase that you need.
There was actually a question. Oh, sorry, there was a question earlier and I guess this may have, it's contingent on the state, but do you need a broker license if you manage other people's rentals? Would you know that? Or is that's more of like a real estate question, right?
Yeah, I think that is, which maybe I should know that too, but I don't know on that one, because the reason I don't know as much is because we actually, when we started off, and so a majority of our homeowners were, so we call them homeowners and renters, right, instead of hosts and guests. Majority of our homeowners were just straight up homeowners that were renting their room initially, and then they house hacked their way. Like, for instance, we had someone that only had one house, did that exact thing. Now she has, had acquired, I think, 8 properties when she went full time. And then when COVID hit, she sold all of that and went into, multifamily or hotels, right? From what I know, she does not need to have a broker's license for that, because she does not have one. And I assume she's an attorney, so I assume she would know the legalities of that. And that's one of our users, right? And so typically the story of Homads users were kind of similar, or like origination stories of Airbnb, where it was hey, it's just individual people who wanted to house hack their way towards building a portfolio. Now we do have, a handful of property management companies, but that's our earlier wave of people. But long story short, I think you don't, but don't take my word for it.
Yeah, here Michelle says that you do need it, at least in California.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah, that's helpful. Oh, that is true, because the person I'm talking about, she manages her own properties. So that may be the difference here.
Perfect. So let me see. So we also have another question regarding the segmentation. So let's say that somebody wants to market or to do some social media marketing on the property for digital nomads. Is there a specific segmentation they should focus on, or what are your recommendations on that?
Yeah, for sure. So super easy to think about. I mean, it makes sense now, but it takes a while when you first think about it. So traveling nurses. So if you're around hospitals, which traveling nurses has been a huge thing since the pandemic, right? So if you're around a hospital, that is the easiest route, because they're getting paid, where they need to go, and they're pretty easy to market towards. One that is similar, but also, not in the same space is traveling scholars. So going on sabbatical, that happens a lot, where you have people who are coming to universities. And then you also have pilots and things like that. But those are a little bit, normally you don't market towards that as much as you do traveling nurses or education. And the reason why the sabbatical side or traveling scholars works well is, again, revenue, right? Like, of course, you're going to get international students who are study abroad, but unless you manage student housing, that's probably not your price point, right? Versus the former are places or people who would be able to afford those type of rentals.
Perfect. Let's see. Do you have any question we didn't ask yet, Frank?
Looking through here, just a few more comments. Apparently in California, you do need a broker's license to rent other properties. And then laws around monthly rentals are still a gray area. So broker license needed in some states as well.
Yeah, and it is definitely a gray area in the sense, in everything that I've said earlier, right? Like, this is only the instance now, just like how short-term rentals before, it did not matter. There were no occupancy taxes. There were no permitting. But then it was demand that was being taken away from the other hospitality players, all the hotels and motels and everything. And that's when regulation came in and said, hey, you know what? Their lobbyists were pretty much saying, hey, if we have to have all those things, they have to too. And so monthly rentals was not a mainstream thing until COVID happened. And because it had to be an alternative, otherwise these hospitality companies had to close down in some way, right? They had to provide some kind of housing. And so now that is becoming more popular, then you're starting to see a few regulations pop up. But even when there were issues in Austin, where we got involved with, the city of Austin did not know, like city code didn't understand that, police didn't understand. They had to go back and ask their supervisors and still didn't know because it was such a great area. So I think should treat it similarly how you would treat it when it was an early on, short-term rental emergence, and then how it will play out.
Perfect. Yeah, I see here another one. Frank, this is for you. So can hostly PMS ignore taxes for bookings over 30 days?
So when it comes to taxes, I'm going to look into that and I'll get back to everyone on that. According to fees after a long term, I know that there's different fees and policies and values and all, but I'm not too sure on that one. But I do know that we do have pricing strategies, so you can offer a certain amount of a percentage off of a stay if it is more than X amount of nights. So you can kind of do that pricing strategy on our end. In terms of taxes, because every state is different, I would have to look into that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it, Fedna.
No, I was going to tell you that I believe you can do it. I was about to check, to be completely honest with you, but yeah, you can do it. And we have another question here. Yeah, so it does. We do have it. So yeah, good news.
Yeah, but it works for like direct bookings and Verbo, and there's like every channel, every state, it's different. So it's kind of a tough question to ask on the spot. Also, I know we touched on cities that you've been seeing kind of an uptick on MTR. Is there like a demographic that you've been seeing more of? Maybe like students, or is it like the home buyers or traveling nurses? I'm sure traveling nurses take the cake, but especially with all things considered. But is there like a demographic that you really see?
Yeah, it's interesting is when we first started Homads, we totally thought it would be your digital nomads, right? And it made sense that was why. Now with COVID, it makes sense why that would happen, right? And that was such a small percentage of our actual renters that came through. A lot has to do with people moving. So they're all people who are relocating. We had a very large percentage of that. Then we still have a decent percentage of people who are relocating, but we actually have seen an uptick of travel. But I think honestly, extended travel, just because, hey, we want to just explore Austin and then we're going to look at Miami for a month. I think that is short-lived because it was only because they could not travel. It was when people were really scared. They had no idea if, traveling was safe. Now people are seeing seasonalities to it and said, oh, okay, well, let's, travel as much as we can until the next, wave. And then so that makes it a little bit easier. So we actually see a little bit less of that. At the beginning of COVID, we saw a lot of it. We occasionally now will see people who are testing cities, but again, that's testing cities because they want to move there. And so a lot of it is just straight up moving rather than travel.
Gotcha. That'll change soon. Now that a lot of restrictions are being lifted and all. Also, and I had the question, it was on the top of my head. You know how they have like the arbitrage model? Do you see that with monthly rentals, or do you like sublets, I guess, or maybe do you allow it? What's kind of your viewpoint on that?
Yeah, so difference, right? Sublet, normally it is, we always say, hey, make sure that wherever it is that you're at allows that. We don't mind because, again, we are really that advertising layer for you, right? And if you want the booking side, it's there. Like it's in on that part, but we give you a lot more freedom. And maybe it's because we are smaller than the other channels, and so we don't have to, get onto you about, whether it's a pet that is what was it, I'm trying to remember what it was. Service, yeah. Service dog. Like those things, we don't really have a lot of pressure to push our host to do anything. And so it's easier within that. We give you a lot more freedom of, hey, we already, essentially we said, we know that you guys know how to do this, right? We're very, very much pushing that we're good at is getting that marketing towards you.
Yeah. And have you seen any trends lately with property managers who do monthly or homads? Because the other day I was speaking with a customer of us about their guidebooks and what were they doing to have their guests have a great experience. And she told me that with digital nomads, she was having a great success. Like she made an arrangement with a co-working space that was close by to their place. She got them a discount. So in the guidebooks, she advertised like working and traveling, go to this place and you get a 10% off if you tell that you come on my behalf. Have you seen any of those strategies or any other that you'd recommend?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, because it's the digital nomad space, is like the biggest thing that people ask for is, do you have stable Wi-Fi? Like, is this, I am taking web, like video calls all day. I can't have this drop. And so that was such a big importance for them. Typically, we didn't see it as much on co-working spaces, again, because of, the environment that we were in that the last couple of years. So a lot of people looked to us as like their private, office space in a way. So having the amenities of an office, but at home was, really important to them. And so having that space essentially.
Nice. Here, Cameron
actually,
is asking.
Oh, go for it. Yep, go for it, Cameron.
Okay, so Cameron is asking if you work with any global relocation companies or if you have a contract with them.
So we initially worked with we worked more directly with companies, right? Of, hey, people who they're hiring and they have to bring them in. One of the things that was really difficult for us is they needed to ensure that the experience was the same for all of their employees. And that's where it was a little bit different. Now we're starting to see where, for instance, there is a tech-enabled modular community, right? And they want to do monthly rentals there. That makes a lot of sense because each person placed there will have that same experience versus, it was nice because how we advertised to these companies was, hey, your employees aren't going to stay in a extended stay, right? They're going to actually be in the neighborhood, which is really important depending on the city. Is most of the second tier cities is more about the neighborhoods rather than these really urban apartment places, right? And so that was really important to them, but it was more of I wouldn't even say liability, but in a way it was a risk, right? That every experience was not the same. So it was something new each time. So it's double-edged sword in a way.
Mm-hmm. And just because I know we touched on insurance policies earlier, how they would differ from short-term to mid-term. But if, as a property manager, as an owner who's currently doing short-term rental, how would you switch? Is there certain things that they should do, like a list of things they should do to switch from being short-term to more of a mid-term?
Yeah, I think that's also in that gray area, right? But we always had pushed a lot because a lot of the problems that you would get from mid-term rentals is more like an annual lease. So getting the coverage as a landlord would cover it more, because then you're going to think about hey, is it someone that is overstaying, is it damage, that sort of stuff, versus when insurance policies for short-term rentals are really expensive typically, because you have a higher chance of parties, you have a lot higher chance of damage, that sort of stuff. What we always joked around with homads is, yeah, they're not really going to throw a party, which they never have, right? It's because they still live there. So they're going to have to clean it up the next morning anyway.
Do you see that on the last day of the reservation that they have a big rager before they check out?
No, they
good.
actually, it's the, you know, security deposit too, right? Which I guess there's security deposits for the short-term rentals too, and I guess they don't care. But a second part of it is also the price range. Like, you know, maybe a whole bunch of young people can have a big party because they can afford to do a day or two a day, right? This is a whole month. So if you're not like dropping a good decent amount of money, like why would you do that, right?
Yeah. And then, oh, actually, Cameron got back. He said, what about third-party bookings? He has access to 2,000 plus units across Canada. Corporate housing would be more of the standard, is what you're saying?
What about third-party bookings? I mean, we do work, like when there is relocation companies, we're happy to work with global relocation companies. I think that was what the original question was, right?
Yep.
Working with them. Yeah. So yeah, we're super happy to. If the supply is there, we will work it to, and that's why I said it's becoming more mainstream, where we actually can utilize those connections that we have now. It was so much more difficult when we didn't have that pretty much access to a corporate housing mentality when it came to property owners.
Now, are there like a lot of, I guess, midterm channels out there? I feel like you really like Homads is a leader in the market for sure. So I haven't really heard of many. So I'm just curious on like if you have like a percentage or a number or something.
Yeah, so we actually got to know a handful and saw a handful before the short-term rentals switched, right, to having more of it. For instance, I think Second Address is one. I think they may still be in business. Bedfully, is it Bedfully or no? It was Bedley was another one. They sold, I think. There is another one in New York as well. From what I know, though, is it's a struggle, right? It's a struggle for a lot of it is because it's market timing. A lot of people thought, hey, there would be a lot. And I think, to be honest, you look at the larger companies that do short-term rentals, the pricing is good. And if you arbitrage, you do all these things, most hosts will not leave these larger platforms because they make enough, right? They didn't realize that you can have that stability and make a decent amount too until COVID happened. And then people had to switch to different platforms, or they had to switch methodology of going into longer term. And they're like, oh, this works too, right? So no one wanted to mess with what they had before. And so it was really, really difficult to actually acquire homeowners previous to COVID. And so we saw a lot of that. And so a lot of the companies that had died out prior to it was because of that. I think it's still, it really is a growing market, right? Like more and more hosts I see that are successfully doing it, do it really well. But it's something that is, if you could remember, you know, back in the early days of short-term rentals, people weren't having full occupancy. They weren't, you know, doing everything. It was really early. That's kind of how I see monthly rentals is, it's still early. All these companies are trying to find like the best niche and trying to get market share of those listings too, right? Trying to convince them like, hey, monthly rentals is, you know, an actual viable option. And so that was a struggle for a lot of other, I guess would be competitors for us. But there are a handful that specialize too, right? Like Sabbatical Homes is one, Sublet is another one. They all kind of have like their different niches of what they do. I know there is another one, I can't remember the name, that does like military only, right? And so it is very different. And military is a really interesting one because they always have to change stations, but they stay for a month or longer within those. So there are definitely niches in it, but there hasn't been a lot of just mainstream, hey, we only do monthly rentals. It doesn't matter if you're travel nurses, like Furnish Finder, right? That is a travel nurse platform. So that would be a good one to also, you know, bring in if you want the travel nurse side. So there are variations, but I think they niche typically.
Great. Looking through the questions, I think we covered everything. Actually, I had a question for pricing strategy. I know we talked about like the revenue and everything earlier, but would you say pricing for a monthly rental, would you do like a day by day and then just consolidate that and have it like one lump sum? Or would you do like, if you stay the 30 days and you just give one, like how does Homads present?
Right. Yeah. Homads, we went actually the other direction. At least originally, and now we're kind of getting to see a hybrid, especially working with hosts, because normally a lot of those hosts work short-term rental and then go towards monthly, right? So the side we typically went with was like, they normally were people that were thinking, hey, this is how much an annual lease is, this is how much short-term rental is. It's kind of a little bit of, in between. And so they kind of just guesstimated within that and saw what they could get, right? Versus like short-term rental, normally if you do it, your nightly rate times 30, it's going to be a pretty large number. You'll get some people, but it's smaller, right? Your occupancy rate will be lower. And I think even on a lot of the platforms, they'll add a monthly rental discount, because most people will ask, if it's coming from the short-term rental pricing, they'll ask for a discount. People don't ask for discounts typically on the Homad side of things because they're reasonably priced. They're priced, definitely above your annual leases because it is a fully furnished, like all bills paid situation. But it's also, not 30 times a nightly rate.
Got it. And I guess that depends on the market and how to really
depends on
maximize
market.
the bottom line.
Yeah, market, and then again, seasonality too. Like there are some months like March is beautiful in certain areas, and like August is terrible in Austin. So it's like I guess pricing. This will help actually on the seasonality of things. Is we normally with rentals that are monthly rentals, it's just like when people are moving in. So it's always the summertime. Summertime is super, super big because no one wants to move their kids past August, and they want to do it during the summer. So that's like your high season. And then the other time is going to be in the December, early January, because that's when people start their new jobs. And so those are always been the seasonality, regardless of COVID or anything, that people typically will see.
Awesome. I really think we covered a lot. I'm thinking of more questions. Guys, if you have any questions, now's the time to ask Vi. She's obviously very well informed. I'll be able to answer all of your questions for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a lot of people are pretty well informed too outside of just
right.
I appreciate that too.
And then really, I guess the benefits and drawbacks of midterm renting really overlap with short-term and even long-term renting. Like for instance, you'll most likely still need to furnish your home, but the rental income is still more consistent during the fixed lease period. So there are a lot of similarities and differences, which we covered. But what would you be like your biggest takeaway, like the top three that make really monthly rentals a bit more, I guess, like a bit more appealing, or a kind of a market to get into? The interest.
I think it really depends on your temperament for risk, right? Is because some people are completely cool with risking occupancy, versus for me, and like I think a lot of the homeowners on Homads is they really enjoy an easy, like not a lot of turnover, right? And so having a month where you don't have to, a month or more where you don't have to think about anything. But what the nice part is you don't have to think anything. And before you kind of got a little less than short-term rentals. What's interesting now is like with more adoption, you're getting that pricing is going a little bit higher and higher. And so you're actually able to charge a lot more because more people are wanting to look for it. And so to me, I like it is because it's just less maintenance overall, right? You're not having to reset as much. You're not having to think about as much. One of the things we didn't cover is maintenance too, right? Like unless you have, and maybe a lot of property managers will have their own handyman, right? That's just full-time there. But if you don't, normally short-term rentals are going to be your weekends. That's your biggest times. And your weekends is always when something breaks. It just always is, right? It's because even if it's just slowly about to break, that guest is not going to tell you typically because they're like, they'll figure it out. And then so the next guest that comes in the next weekend, it is completely broken. and you now have to find go through 10 contractors, find the right person. They upcharge you because it's the weekend. Versus for a monthly rental, it is kind of similar in the annual lease where they're like, hey, you know what, the water pressure is kind of low, or, you know, something like that. And so maintenance is honestly a lot easier to handle for a monthly rental than, you know, with a short term. Short term, you're thinking like, hey, hotel stay, like the amount of communication needed for a short term rental is just higher as well versus monthly. Yeah, they'll have questions. Where's the bus stop? That sort of stuff. But you get that established. You normally don't hear from them until near the end, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, there's really so many great takeaways, V. So thank you for that. And again, there's a lot of people requesting. So for those of you who are listening, who are just overwhelmed with the wealth of information that you've just received, don't worry. We're going to be sending out an email after this webinar with a link to the recording. And then, of course, if you want me to introduce you directly to V, I can absolutely do that. So V, for the people to learn more about what you and Homads are up to, and just to hear your musings, kind of where can they go? How would you kind of recommend they be in touch, or is it like homads.com, and then how would they be in touch with you?
So we normally will send things out to our users. So if you sign up and you don't want to have a listing there yet, super easy. It's just making an account. From there, we can send it out to our users. Also, pretty easy is if you have questions, you can also send it to team@homads.com, and then our team can also get to you. We do also have like a chat, you know, within our website too. So if you want to just directly talk with us, our team typically will answer pretty quickly.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah. And as I mentioned earlier, if any of you want additional information on Homads, I'll introduce you to V. Also, any of our products, please feel free to reach out to us directly. We're always happy to coordinate and schedule a one-on-one demo with you. And as mentioned, I'm going to be sending out a follow-up email. I'll have my contact information, Federico's contact information. And please, any questions you have, feel free to respond to that follow-up, and we can get a demo scheduled and just have a discussion going. So again, V, thank you so much for taking the time today. Federico, thank you for your help. But it seemed like we got a lot covered in a short amount of time. So appreciate the both of you. Appreciate everyone on this call. Thank you so much. Have a great week ahead, and we look forward to hearing back from you.